Okay, everyone, I am so excited today because it's finally time for X Men 97. This is going to be my spoiler reviews of episodes 1 and 2, so make sure you've watched the first two episodes before you watch this review. And before I get started, make sure if you're catching up on the original series, I have literally reviewed every single episode of the original series just recently, so you can check out any of those reviews and make sure to subscribe. This is a full X-Men channel with so much X-Men content daily. So there's a lot to unpack here. We're going to start with episode 1. I'm going to break down every scene and what I thought about it and things that are working, what's not working. So let's go to X-Men 97 episode 1, To Me, My X-Men. Now this was written by Beau DeMayo, who was recently fired. We don't know the total exact reason why. And this was directed by Jake Castorena. Now, before we even get in the episode, it's the first time we're seeing the Marvel animation intro. Now, what's really cool about that is you see Spider-Man animated, you see the Thing from Fantastic Four animated series, so it's showing you this world of possibilities that can happen now with this new part of Marvel Studios that is Marvel Animation. And they can really do like they used to do, where they have all these kind of worlds connect. And maybe X-Men 97 is a bridge to have a Spider-Man animated show come back, or do a really good Fantastic Four animated show, which would be awesome. And you see What If they're putting in that branch, which a little weird because What If's also MCU, so it's a little confusing, but I get what they're doing. And I'm still not totally sold that X-Men 97 is only for Marvel Animation, its own world, even though they've said that. I still feel like there's going to be some kind of MCU connection here by the end of this show. Now, let's talk about the intro, because everyone wanted to see what they were going to do with the intro music. It still sounds great using the same intro theme, but I love they're blending the old poses of the character with the new poses of the character. And it's very telling that Professor X is in that intro sequence. That's not a little thing. At some point, he's going to come back. We know that the original show had ended with Lilandra taking him, so he is definitely going to be back in some form. He's not dead. And Sinister getting a little moment in the intro as well. So we know Mr. Sinister is going to be in this show, and it's going to be exciting to see how they do that, especially because it is the same voice actor for Mr. Sinister, Christopher Britton, who was great. And I still love that they kept them running at each other, the Brotherhood versus the X-Men at the end, and adding the 97 to the old logo. So really good job on that intro. Now right away you're going to get stuff that is a little bit exposition to explain what's going on. You see the news is talking about Guy Rick's assassination of Charles Xavier, but it's interesting that they say last year, so you know this is a year time jump, but that the reaction in the public has actually spurred more mutant sympathy. So that is huge, setting the scene for how it's already a different world and that effect Charles had. Now we'll see that Roberto da Costa, aka Sunspot, is the character who's taking the role of Jubilee. So in the original series, it all really starts through Jubilee's eyes. She's the placeholder for the audience, and they're doing that a lot here with Roberto. Now Roberto is a big part of this episode. Now I'm thinking about it, it is interesting episode 2. He's not in it that much, but we'll get to that. But in this episode, he finds himself in this Friends of Humanity hideout. Now, the Friends of Humanity were such a big part in the original run of this series, so already we're seeing them back. Same thing with the Sentinels, so these are classic X-Men villains. And we're seeing the same mutant collars we saw a ton in the original show, and they're still keeping them blinking, which what they did much better in this show than the original run is they actually don't have the beeping sound going on and on and on, where it was so distracting in the original show. Now, I'd love to hear everyone's theories on that missing sign that was outside of the hideout. To me, that looked like Bishop's sister Shard, who I love from the original series, and I hope we see her again, but I'm not 100% sure, so I'd love to hear your guys' comments on that. Now, if you know this channel, you know me, my favorite X-Men is Storm, so it was really exciting to see Storm be the first one to have an epic entrance, and I love how they did it because they had the captor of Roberto da Costa. He sees his breath, then he hears the thunder and the wind starts kicking up, so you know who's coming. You know the Weather Witch is on her way, and when she comes through that window and then Bishop slides down, what a great entrance for both of them. And the animation on both of their powers already, you're getting an idea of how this show's going to be, and it's fantastic. Out of these two first episodes, I am so blown away how good the action is in the animation. It's beautiful, it's exciting, and they do not hold back. And then you get an awesome entrance for Cyclops, so they're giving all these characters their moment. And honestly, I'll say from these first two episodes, it seems like, too, they know that Wolverine, from real, true diehard X-Men fans, it's nothing against Wolverine, but he is given so much screen time over all the other X-Men so much, and just all the X-Men we've seen in television and movie versions, that it was nice that he kind of took a little back seat here and gave some of the other characters some time to shine, which I thought was very smart and definitely something they were thinking about. Now, I love Cyclops too. He's just beaming himself around, and he even beams Roberto with him to get away from people. I thought that was really cool. And it's crazy to see that the Friends of Humanity is using the Sentinel technology. They're using Sentinel arms as guns, which was crazy. And they have a giant Sentinel arm in general. And that's always a bad sign for the X-Men. And they even try to use on the X-Men here. And we get a great moment we saw from the trailer where one of them takes off Cyclops' visor and he's like, wait, don't, I surrender. And he just goes, not. So they're keeping that cheese there that you need for a show like this. Now we see the Marvel animation intro had hinted Spider-Man. So it's cool to see that the Daily Bugle flies by and it says, is Spider-Man a mutant? And then they say the Hellfire Gala and Hellfire Club you think of. And I'm excited. Hopefully we see Emma Frost and that group again in this show. But again, interesting, they're already showing hints of the other side of this universe with the other shows. So now the X-Mansion looks great. I always said in my reviews for the original show, I love the pool, I love the basketball court, and they really highlight that here. What I love about the X-Men at the X-Mansion is they're just chill. I love they have coffee together. They're playing basketball. That's what they're family. That's what makes them so special to me. And of course, Gambit's cooking in this rock tank top. It literally says rock. And you see Cyclops is taking on this leadership role. And he's still talking about Professor X's ways and that they have to stay vigilant and they can't take their foot off the gas pedals. And they set this up well because with the writing, having Cyclops taking that leadership role, it just totally throws that off your expectations because you're getting comfortable with that and then Magneto steps in and takes that role. And that's what upsets Cyclops. So they did a good job of setting you up and then flipping it and making you kind of get shocked there about Magneto. And they do a good job of building conflict between characters, and there's going to be so much more even in the further episodes you're going to see they're setting up, especially with like a Gambit and a Magneto, which we'll get to. But what was cool is we got Professor X comes in the kitchen. Now this is voiced by Ross Marquand. You know him from Walking Dead, and you know him in the MCU as the Red Skull, and he does a great Professor X voice already, but it's a tease because it's Morph. You knew the second he was coming in, it was going to be Morph, and the laugh of Morph is perfect, so they nailed that, which is great. Now, I will say we see Morph really doesn't have much lines so far, but when we saw the end of episode 2, I liked that they changed his face a little because he was really like the goofiest looking and the goofiest sounding in the original show. So if there's one character you can kind of really get away with a little more license to change, I think it would definitely be Morph. So I'm totally cool with the changes they have made to Morph. And we also see Jean is pregnant, which is going to be a super important part of this story so far. Now, when I was talking about Roberto DaCosta having the Jubilee role, he literally wakes up in a bed, two beasts, just like Jubilee did. And it's fitting that Jubilee is also there. She's been in that moment that he is experiencing. And it's great. We see Beast listening to Mozart. And they get a nice little Easter egg there. You see a book on his shelf is by Jay Lewald, who is Julia Lewald, who is a writer on the original run and is the wife of Eric Lewald, who is one of the creators of the original show. And they're consulting producers here too, which was great. Like Larry Houston, they brought back as well, people who worked and created the original show, just watching things go on this too, which I thought was just genius. They did that. Now, Jubilee's voice actress changed to Holly Cho, and I gotta say, she is perfect. I was loving how much Jubilee's dialogue was great here, but the feel of Jubilee, like the voice really just enhances it. So I'm really digging Jubilee so far, and a lot of time they're giving Jubilee. I love Jubilee. I love her powers, and you can tell the creators do too. And I like even when she's dancing in the episode using her powers. It's just a fun character and very, very 90s. Now it's also interesting, Beast was playing around with Bishop's time travel device, so that's setting something up with time travel that we'll probably see later in the season. I also love they use the word creeps a lot. Jubilee says creeps, referring to the bad guys. Same with Cyclops, so it's saying true to the original series. They'd always say that. They always say that in the X-Men comics as well. Now, it was cool how creative a lot of things were and just ideas you'll see a lot in the action later on, which we'll get to, like you saw in the trailer with Gambit powering up Wolverine's claws. But you also see things like having more transform into amazing different surprises like Professor X and more we'll get to later. But also Robot Magneto being in the Danger Room was really cool because you get to have a moment with him in his full classic outfit. Now this leads to Wolverine's entrance, and I like that highlighted his beard stubble better in this than they ever did in the original show. And I love seeing the frame in Charles's office of the original X-Men team. So I'd said this in my reviews of the original series, but I would love a show, and I still think they should do this, where they start from the beginning with that team, because it's already in the lore of this show that they have the original team from the original comics. They can do a whole series on how it started. That's such a cool, interesting comic storyline, and I'd love to see it start from square one, like a little prequel X-Men animated series. Now we meet Dr. Valerie Cooper running on a treadmill. She's talking to Jean and Scott. Now what's crazy about that is she was actually the original voice actor of Jean Catherine Disher. That has changed now to Jennifer Hale as the new Jean voice, but I'm glad they still brought the same voice actors back in another part at least. But you're already seeing these villains from the past come back, and they're looking now into Dr. Trask. And Dr. Trask and Gyrich, these are the guys who brought about the Sentinels, brought about Master Mold. Now, they stay so true to the Cyclops character really well here. Like, when Charles's death certificate arrives, that Cyclops says if he was here, the team wouldn't be playing hoops, goofing off. This is Cyclops, right? Like, Cyclops, he's the teacher's pet. You know, he does things the right way by the book. But Jean brings up the baby's coming, and, you know, maybe it's time to think of a life beyond the X-Men. So now we know this baby is Cable, and it's interesting how that is leaning toward all the hints about who really is this. Is this a clone Madeline Pryor? And if you're an X-Men fan, you know it's kind of coming here, and obviously from all the items that have come out before the show, you know it's coming. But they do a good job, if someone's just jumping in the show not knowing any of this stuff, of like toying with you and not knowing what's coming and who's this baby. And it's a really strong reason to have changes happen to this team. Now we get to see the X-Men playing basketball, which I loved, and Gambit has a full six-pack here. But you're already seeing it's getting tense with Wolverine and Cyclops, but you see Jean always gets that little soft side out of Wolverine and calms him down. Jean always has Wolverine's heart. So they're doing a lot of things X-Men fans love to see, and having that still addressed, and that's always kind of going to be there. Now, I love seeing Jubilee dancing, going into the club, and the club looked really sick. Just the animation, the feel of it. And Morph just cruelly teases Wolverine as Jean. But Wolverine says he knows Scott and Cyclops are leaving. I guess he knows that if they're having a baby, it's just not going to work at the school. But I still wanted maybe a stronger way that Wolverine would be so confident in his inference here. Not much weak writing in the show so far, but that was something that just didn't feel strong enough. I also want to say about Wolverine's character, I love Cal Dodd doing the voice. He does sound older here because he is older, but I was actually more disappointed in the writing for Wolverine. He's not having strong one-liners written for him so far. I thought the first episodes, they were very weak. I didn't have really one laugh from Wolverine, which is odd because that was like what was giving me all the laughs in the original series. So we'll see. That could change in coming episodes. Now, what was a cool sequence is when the X-Men are falling from the X-Jet and they're attacked by a Sentinel. And I love Morph changing into Archangel. That shocked me. That was really cool. And what was amazing was Cyclops is falling down through the sky and he uses his beams to land. That was amazing. And he says to me, my X-Men. So you get the nerd chills, even though you already saw that in the trailer. Leading up to that was what made that hit even harder. And there's a lot of great moments like that so far in these two episodes. Now, they find Trask. Master Mold is behind him, so we see Master Mold again, which I didn't expect. And you see the Sentinels are creeping up from the ground, almost like zombies. And just when that theme music kicked in during this battle and how great this battle was, man, that was so great. Seeing Rogue throwing the helmet and then Beast taking one Sentinel over. And Bishop getting to use his powers a lot, especially seeing more of the absorbing powers, which you don't see a lot of in the original run. But the moment for me, as a Storm fan, so I'm very biased, but when Cyclops says, give him the forecast, woo, and the music with Storm coming in, the visual, that was incredible. Like, that's my favorite Storm moment so far. Even bigger and better than any moment with her in the original run. I was blown away with the Ice Storm coming in too. Just amazing moment for Storm. I was like in heaven. And we get to see Gambit charge up Wolverine, which was shown in the trailer, but still really cool. And what made it was that they have Morph turn into the Blob for Wolverine to jump off of. That's the kind of stuff that blew me away. Like, so creative and great idea, just genius. Now, they destroy Master Mold for now, but I feel like because of Jean's vision that we're going to see Master Mold again. Something is going to happen with these Sentinels. That is not the end of them. Now, there's a nice moment when Cooper tells Cyclops he sounds like Charles and he would have been proud today. I like that a lot. And Jubilee has a nice scene here with Roberto. Now, we know she obviously has a crush on him. And she tells Roberto it's not a weird school, it's a family that's accepting. And we start to see his hints of Sunspot with the solar energy, and he's even confused by it. But he doesn't even have any inch of self-acceptance, so he's got a lot of therapy to go. So back on the basketball court, Jean and Cyclops announce they're leaving. Jubilee is like, well, who's going to lead us if they leave? And right on cue, Magneto shows up. Now, I saw some critics in like moments like this say it like moves too fast, the story, but they obviously have not watched the original series in a long time, because that was what the show was. It moves quick. It's exciting. It's a kid's cartoon, right? So this is even longer. It's just 30 minutes. So I feel like you can get away with even moving how quick they're moving, because it feels not like 30 minutes. It feels like 15, because it's just so much fun. So in this case, I feel like that is how X-Men, the animated series, rolled. Is like it's a quick paced show. So I feel like this feels like the same. If you were just to turn on an older episode and put this on, it feel in line with it in that sense. Difference is this just feels more serious and less goofy, but I like that. I think that's the evolving of the show that's really working. I just don't have a problem with the pace. That's what this show is. So we go to Charles' office with the last will and testament, and who has it? It is Magneto, and he's like, his fortune, his school now belongs to me, my X-Men. So what a cliffhanger. And what's the chef's kiss on this is having the end credits that everyone wanted back, showing the X-Men's powers, but it's a little updated. Very, very cool. So there's so much love you're seeing put into the show. You just feel a sigh of relief, like, oh my God, this is great. So that was the big thing episode 1 had to do, and it delivers. So I'm giving episode 1 a 9.2. I think it really knocks it out of the park, and stuff I'm already going to always remember in just X-Men lore, like that storm moment, the Cyclops coming from the sky, and of course Wolverine charging up Gambit and then thrown into Morph, turning into the Blob. Just really amazing, exciting stuff. I don't remember last time we had superhero stuff this exciting. It's like just fun, and it feels like a comic book. So really, really excellent. Okay, so episode 2 is titled Mutant Liberation, and spoilers again, but this was again written by Bu DeMaio and directed by, this time, Chase Connolly. So we get previously on X-Men. So I'm happy about that. We got to have that for this show. And now what was interesting is the intro is a little different. Magneto opens the intro in his new getup, which was awesome. And you see they have little hints about what you're going to see in the episode. Like, I love they showed callbacks to the original series, like Storm taking the throne of the Morlocks, Dark Phoenix in the Battle on the Moon, which will be referenced in this episode, and Bishop when he was getting lost in the time traveling. So really cool callbacks, and I like that some of them actually connect to the episode. Oh, and also Magneto on Asteroid M. So that is very similar to the episode that focuses on that and him being in court. And this is so similar, seeing really this episode is a trial of Magneto. I'm actually surprised they didn't title it that. Now, Magneto, we see is very different because he's saving not a mutant, but a human child from a falling Ferris wheel, something he would never bother with. And that's why the news says mutant terrorist turned hero. But you see that Cyclops is hurt now because he feels like, why would Charles choose Magneto over me? This just doesn't feel right. Now, it shocked me. I did not expect to see them this soon, but it was awesome how good the Morlocks looked updated, because they looked so dated in the original series. They were the most like Scooby-Doo looking like characters, so they looked great here. And you got even to see Leech again. Who doesn't love Leech? But you see they're saved by this new Magneto from the Friends of Humanity. But this is the thing, is that at the X-Mansion, the X-Men are doubting even trusting this guy. And rightfully so, it's Magneto. But I was waiting because I was worried it wasn't episode 1. But in episode 2, we got a Beast line quoting somebody, which is my favorite. And Beast says, "The only safe and sure way to destroy your enemy is make him your friend. Mark Twain." Loved it. And you get little hints that Rogue had a history with Eric because she's one of the first ones to suggest to trust him. I also like little X transitions between scenes they're using. And I love it cuts to Jean and Storm together and she's holding her Marvel Girl outfit. That was great. And she's reflecting on that moon battle from the Dark Phoenix saga. But Jean confides in Storm. She's worried about her child being a mutant. And this lines up well because Cyclops and Jean in the original show were worried about that. And if it was necessary to even have a kid, they didn't want to put their kid in the same life of their life as a mutant, the struggle. But Storm says the right thing. She points out if she wasn't a mutant, she wouldn't have met all the great people in her life. The X-Men had this family. She wouldn't have found this place. So it is a great moment between Storm and Jean, and that's an important thing, and they're definitely focusing on that too, is that friendship, that bond between Storm and Jean is very important with the X-Men. Now, Rogue has a great line where she says to Magneto, "Your little pep talk went about as smooth as a dozen cats in a yarn store." That was great. And I like Magneto finally explaining to why he wore the helmet to prevent Charles from his psychic powers. I do not think that was ever mentioned in the original show, so it was great they put it here. But I like Rogue says he was also afraid to detect the love Charles still had for him. That was also some really good writing. But Magneto's now seen the results of Charles' sacrifice, his vision that this is a more unified world. Now, when Magneto and Rogue started getting touchy, I was shocked. I was like, what? And they did a good job hiding that. That wasn't any promotion or any hints like that, so that was good. And he says, do you think your team would still trust you if they knew? So I'm excited to learn about that past story of Rogue and Magneto. And like I said before, it's obviously setting up some great conflict that's going to be between Magneto and Gambit, because Gambit not gonna like this. And Gambit literally does see her leaving his office later on in the episode, so he knows now. Now, when Cooper and her men show up, I love Magneto's like, ready yourself, X-Men, and Cyclops is like, we don't lose our cool when the good guys show up. And he goes, you were saying? That was great when they come out with all the guns. But Magneto's able to threaten them with the helicopters, and I love his line too. He's like, I should have thought twice, like calling out Cooper for her saying he should have, when he's one step ahead of her the whole time. Now, she wants Magneto to stand trial for his crimes against humanity to the UN, and he's actually down with this because this can fix his image, not just to the X-Men, but to the people, and for him to gain trust. Now he's put in chains, like the famous Claremont cover of him in this outfit we've seen him in, the purple outfit, which I love. I think it's a cool change, and I think it looks great. And now we get the trial of Magneto. Now we get this new member of the Friends of Humanity introduced, the Executioner, who's the coolest member we've seen so far of that group, and he plans to assassinate Magneto. Now, I love when Xavier's talking about his traumatic past and the lessons he learned from Charles about harmony and change and mutants and humans getting along. And he calls them out too, because they're hard on him about everything he's done, but he's like, hey, you guys created sentinels, you guys created collars for us. I love their cutting between this Jean going into labor. Now, I love when she goes into labor because there's a great moment where she's like, Logan, he's here, talking about the baby, and Logan goes, who, Apocalypse? That was great. And I love she uses her powers to give him the keys and his coat. Now, we'll see the Friends of Humanity protesters are breaching the courthouse, and this is where Executioner gets a moment to shine here. He's using the Sentinel gun, and he goes toe-to-toe with Cyclops, which got way more brutal than I thought the show could even go, especially with him punching him, but not the punching, just adding the blood. I was like, okay, not only does the animation look like Invincible, that was starting to feel like the show Invincible. Pretty intense. That must have been like the line they could go, like right there, for what the show is rated. And then what shocked me was Morph changing into Lady Deathstrike, which was awesome. Then Colossus, and then I think the one that probably had a lot of fans screaming, Psylocke. Really cool, and I hope we actually see the real Psylocke in this show again, because she had such little time in the original run, but that was great to see her here. That's the fun they're having with Morph, that they can really just do so much with his powers. They could have anybody appear at any moment. It's like a good version of Mystique, basically. Now, seeing Magneto and Storm work together was amazing, and her lightning conducting on the metal, making a cage, was awesome. But she has this huge moment where she blocks this bullet from the Executioner, and I screamed here. I was like, no. Because I was like, if they just killed Storm, I'm not only not watching the show anymore, I'm deleting this X-Men channel. But thank God she's alive. But this made Magneto so mad. And it's a great moment how they wrote this, because it's showing that old Magneto come back. I love that he bangs the Executioner up and down. That was great. And it was a really like sad, well done moment though, when Storm's like, I can't feel the breeze, can't connect to nature. That was just incredible. But Magneto's able to control the urge to do what the old Magneto would have done and just probably destroy all of them, because he reflects on what Charles really believed in, and now he feels honored that he entrusted him with his dream and his vision. And a great line where he's like, please do not make me let you down. And that was great because it was also a pun at that moment with him having them all up in the air. And the music is great also throughout this whole show, especially in the scene. It's the Newton brothers who are great. You might actually recognize their music too from a lot of the Mike Flanagan series. And it's great how it's all just cutting between the birth of finally Nathan Charles Summer, aka Cable. So it was cool to hear the middle name Charles as well, but that was great. Now, the UN pardons Magneto because he kept his cool. They could see he was different, and they're actually giving him aid to Genosha. So those are things that are good. These are good things that Charles would love to see. And they even talk about adding Genosha to the UN, And I love when Cyclops gives him coffee. He's like, poison? And he goes, no, dark roast. Great. But it cuts to a very sad moment where Beast finds out that the Executioner's radiation he used in his gun is like a permanent version of those collars that just control and don't let her use her powers. And that sucks. And Storm hears the thunder and she's looking at her uniform destroyed. What does this tell me? A new uniform is coming when she comes back. So I'm going to miss Storm. Whatever's going to happen with her, we'll see. But she's obviously going to get her powers back at some point. But I think we're going to hopefully get either the punk outfit, or I'd love to see the classic full black outfit with the gold from the original appearances of Storm in the comics. That would be so awesome. And I see Rogue and Magneto cozy up again, and Gambit sees it, so that's going to have big implications. And I love Morph brings beers to Wolverine, and Wolverine and him go to fight, and he morphs into Sabretooth. That was so cool. And you love it because that's the thing with Wolverine. Like, that was such a great thing in the comics too, where he would fight Nightcrawler all the time like that. So that was kind of sick. Now, Storm has a nice little narration at the end here where she's like, we are no longer connected, Jean. Now this is through her letter. She's like, now we walk in two very different worlds. Always cherish memories as X-Men together, though. So it's sad she's leaving the X-Men. She feels like she doesn't belong there anymore. But the X-Men are shocked by this, but they can't even like take that all in yet, because there's a huge twist here where Jean shows up and you're like, wait a minute, which one's Madeline Pryor, which one's Jean? What a cliffhanger. Now, obviously, the one who had Cable is Madeline Pryor, and that Jean is the regular Jean that shows up. So it's going to be crazy to see the X-Men's reaction to this, that there's two Jeans in that room right now. So I thought this was a great episode, just like the premiere. I'm actually give this one 9.3. I thought it was even a little better because we got to see a lot of character work here with Magneto, have a lot of twists in this one, and I thought that the courtroom scene with Storm and Magneto working together was just fantastic, and it has a tragic ending with a great twist, but there's hope too with the progress of Magneto with Genosha and the UN relations. So it's a lot of exciting stuff they're setting up here. I really, really enjoyed these first two episodes. I'm actually shocked how good it was. Like, way better than I expected, because I have such high expectations and I love the X-Men. So wow. I'm like, this was so awesome and fun. And I mean, I think this is just going to be a huge hit. I'm really excited, and Marvel really needed this. And guess what? That's the magic of the X-Men, right? Like, it's time for the X-Men to take over now and get people back on, liking MCU, whatever you want to call it, Marvel Studios, Marvel Animation. Just this is the group here. So I'm pumped. Now, please subscribe. I would appreciate so much. I reviewed every single episode of the original series, like I said, so you can watch those reviews. And I also review figures, anything X-Men, you name it, comics. And please subscribe to some of my reviews of X-Men 97. I have a big interview coming out tomorrow with one of the actors, so stay tuned for that. And I'll see you next time.